Thank you everyone for joining the class. As I mentioned before, the topic today is gerunds. So these are ing verbs which we use a lot in English. Hi Marisol. Hello Hassan from Iran. So one thing, this is kind of like a learning moment that I had with Spanish. I remember in my class I needed to write an essay. And I wrote an essay and I brought it to my teacher. And I remember this was in college. My Spanish teacher told me, you use a lot of gerunds. Like you are always using the kind of equivalent of ing verbs. And she told me, in Spanish, we don't really use those so much like you do in English. So you're kind of overusing gerunds. You're using them way too much. And I looked at my paper and I noticed, I was using a lot of gerunds. And that's because for me as an English speaker, it made more sense. Like I used them in a lot of contexts where we normally use them in English. So I kind of want to do the opposite for all of you who speak languages where the gerund or ing verb equivalent is really not used. You'll need to do the opposite process of what I did, which is add in more gerunds instead of taking away the gerunds, which is what I did. So another thing, just to let you know what I was thinking, that's a pretty good way to learn how to use this kind of structure in conversation is learning with chunks. This can be very helpful to incorporate vocabulary and structures into your speaking. Because chunks are phrases, like entire phrases. And this can be very helpful because, for example, if you remember the phrase, I don't know, as one set, as one chunk, it can be easier for you to speak in a conversation and just think, I don't know. And you have kind of the whole phrase occur to you instead of translating word for word. So if you don't have practice using chunks to learn English, we're going to look at this a little bit today. I recommend looking into it if you're someone that especially feels like you have trouble incorporating new grammar and vocabulary into your English. Definitely, have a conversation with ChatGPT and say, could you tell me about chunks? So, one context where we use a lot of gerunds after phrases is when we're talking about starting and stopping actions. And you can remember that with gerunds, we use gerunds after phrasal verbs. We use an ing after phrasal verbs. We also use the ing verbs after preposition. Words like responsible always needs a preposition after. So like, I am responsible for marketing. Another situation is after specific verbs. So for that reason, we can kind of look at this as one context when it's really common to use gerunds. So for example, I'm going to read the different phrases here or chunks, and I want you guys to also give me any example that you can in the chat, maybe related to an action that you stopped or started. I think the full chunk would be like, I give up or he gave up, it would be more like a complete phrase. But for example, he gave up smoking last year, right? This is kind of a synonym with the next one. She quit eating sugar. So to give up or to quit something, afterwards, the activity that they do or the verb is going to have an ing in English. Then we have to finish something. So I just finished writing my report. To start, he started learning French. To begin, also similar to start, she began working here in 2019. And the last one is to be in the middle of. So I'm in the middle of cleaning my apartment. All of these phrases here that are talking about starting and stopping or just progress with action are going to be followed by an ing verb. So we have an example. I was sleeping and then I woke up. Yeah, so with this one, I would say I woke up, first of all, because if you were sleeping in the past, then you woke up. That, you're using an ing verb, but it's a little bit different from what I'm talking about. So you're using an ing verb to literally talk about a continuous action that was in progress. Here, all of these are words or phrases that are followed by just an ing verb without using the verb to be to talk about the present or past continuous. So it's a little bit different what I'm asking for here. Both of them have ing, but in that example, you're using the past continuous tense. But for example, I could say in the present, I finish working at 5 o'clock today, for example. So it's not dependent on the tense when we're going to use it in combination with one of these. I gave up eating fried potatoes last week. Here you can say fried potatoes, but I think only the word fries is the most common one. At least in the United States. In the UK, you would say chips. I started walking more with a tracker since the beginning of the year. I would say since the beginning of the year. I started walking more with a tracker since the beginning of the year. Nice. Okay. I just finished looking for a new apartment. So remember that it's not necessary to have the phrase here using the ing form, just that no matter what, the verb afterwards needs to have the ing form. It's possible that both have the ing form, but it's not dependent on it. So I can say, I am giving up smoking. And it's totally fine for both to be ing. But I could also say I gave up smoking or I will give up smoking. The part of give up can be in any verb tense. It's just that the verb afterwards needs to be with the ing form. I stopped learning French. Exactly. I started eating healthy this month. Nice. So if you guys want to practice incorporating more gerunds into your English, maybe something you can do is write a short text about actions that you have stopped and started and what are you in the middle of. I could say, no, don't call me. I'm in the middle of teaching a class, for example. In general, these phrases like to be in the middle of, these phrases that end in words like of are going to have an ing verb after them because it's a preposition. Also, hello to everyone that is joining. We are practicing phrases, I will say chunks, and also words that are followed by ing verbs. In general, two things you can do to make your English sound a lot more natural are to incorporate more phrasal verbs into your English and also use more gerunds. And these go hand in hand because after phrasal verbs, you need a gerund. So if you're having an action there, right? So those are two things you guys can practice together at the same time. Okay, I'm going to bring us to the next one. So we understand to be in processes, you need to use the gerund. Okay, this is a little bit similar, so it made sense. I'm going to move my little face around. This is a little bit similar, so it made sense to follow up with this one for me. Habits and repeated actions. So, habits and repeated actions. These are all different phrases that we can use related to habits and repeated actions. The first one, to keep on. So I could say, he keeps on talking during meetings. Oh yeah, I can explain what chunks are. If you guys want to read and absorb the examples here. Go for it. Chunks basically are groups of words that tend to go together in a complete phrase. So on the last one, the phrase that I had, to be in the middle of something. It's not like I'm teaching you one phrasal verb or one single word, but the entire phrase, to be in the middle of, or I am in the middle of. And some teachers teach using this strategy of chunks, where instead of giving you a vocabulary list, they'll give you a list of phrases or chunks for you to learn those instead and practice using complete phrases in sentences, so that in the moment of speaking, you're less likely to translate from your native language word for word instead of, and for example, for a lot of people, it's difficult to remember when to use don't or doesn't or this auxiliary verb. So it can help people to just remember that I don't know. This is one chunk. This is one phrase. I don't know. So yeah, that would be chunks, is learning complete phrases that you can incorporate into sentences instead of a vocabulary list. I personally think that both ways can be helpful, but also depending on your level. If you are really kind of struggling with translating from your native language, I highly recommend trying out learning in chunks. Or if you just feel like your sentences, you want them to sound more natural and less like a direct translation from your native language, you can try to learn with chunks. Yeah, it's like having cheat phrases. And could like I think highly recommend could also be maybe, especially if you learn it like I highly recommend, she highly recommends, and like knowing that you can put any person before that could be a chunk, definitely. Yeah, I'll need to find if there's a definition of how many words are in a chunk, because I'm not sure like how many words, but I think those kind of phrases where it can just roll off the tongue like a cheat phrase, like silly sausage. So not all of these, I would say, for example, to be used to is a chunk. Like this is a complete phrase that you should just remember instead of trying to translate word for word from your native language. Same thing with like to spend time or to waste time. That could be kind of a chunk or a phrase that you should remember instead of trying to translate from your native language, because what happens is then people say instead something like, I pass time, or something that doesn't sound as natural because they're not using the typical words that go together in English. So I'll explain a little bit. Some of these are phrasal verbs, which I think would also count as a chunk. But so for example, to keep on, he keeps on talking during meetings. After this phrase, we're going to use the gerund, right? And to keep on doing something is like to continue doing something. And the next one, to go on, is a little bit similar in that you can use it when someone is doing something excessively that you don't really like. So she went on explaining the topic for an hour. These are different though, because to keep on is kind of like the person's repeating the same thing over and over. And to go on is like they are just doing one thing, but really extending how much they're doing it. So I'm curious from all of you, maybe you can give an example of a habit or repeated action that you have. It can be something positive or also maybe something that annoys you. Like my sister keeps on sending me boring jokes. And when I told her to stop, I called her and she wasted my time explaining to me why the joke wasn't boring. I don't know, this is a terrible example, but the meeting went on for ages. Exactly. And then if you wanted to use a gerund there, you could say, what did the people go on doing in this meeting? The meeting went on for ages because the boss went on explaining to us why we are such terrible employees, for example. So hopefully that's not a relatable example to anyone, but if you're joining, we are practicing different phrases and chunks that you can use in sentences that are followed by the gerund or the ing verb. So these are all related to habits and repeated actions. If you have any example followed by an ing verb or gerund, definitely you can put it in the chat. And yeah, I also want everyone to just keep in mind, like I said before, we're using the ing verbs in English not only in the continuous tenses. We also use ing verbs in contexts where you probably just use a simple verb in your native language. So that's important to keep in mind. It's not always a continuous action. I would like to know how stative verbs work here. Do you mean like if there's a stative verb after? Stative verbs also work here because it's not a continuous tense. So, for example, like with the word to understand. In general, it's a lot more common when you're just talking in the simple tenses, like I understand English. It's not typical with stative verbs to say I am understanding English because it's a continuous tense, right? But the thing is, here we're not using gerunds as a continuous tense. So the same thing applies for stative verbs too. I'm used to understanding English. I practice understanding English. I spend time understanding English. It doesn't make any difference if it's a stative verb because we're not using it as a continuous verb here. It has an ing, but it's not in a continuous tense form. So it doesn't make a difference if it's a word that you normally always just use in the present tense, for example. Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's the thing we need to kind of get away from. Like that's the change in way of thinking that we should have when looking at ing verbs in English. Don't always translate them if you're a Spanish speaker to ando or yendo. No. Often that's not the case. Only if you see that verb to be there and it's a continued action, in that case, it's a continuous verb. But in all of these cases that I'm mentioning today, it is not used as a continuous verb. I'm going to go to the next set of words. So if you guys have one from a previous one that I passed up, definitely let me know. Okay, and I'm trying to move my image now that I Okay, so here we have feelings and preferences. This is also a case when after I found myself sleeping alone. Yes, that is also an expression that will be followed by a gerund. I'm trying to think if there's another rule there at play with myself. To find yourself. I taught myself listening is important. They watched themselves reading a book. I think there it's tricky. It might be a little bit of a continuous action happening there because if you're talking about an action that you in a way caught yourself doing, it's almost like you started paying attention and you were doing this action. But here it would just be a gerund also. You're right, because you don't have a separate verb to be before that. So it's a non-conjugated verb. That's the difference. So exactly, that would be another chunk where you're going to use an ing verb. Exactly. Yeah. And it's interesting. I was thinking a lot of chunks or phrases that end in a reflexive pronoun, like myself, yourself, themselves, have a gerund after. I don't know if that's a coincidence. I'll have to look into that because I haven't thought about it before. But that's why I appreciate when you guys ask questions, because I feel like it brings up things that maybe other people hadn't realized, including myself. So here I have some words and phrases that are connected to feelings and experiences. So after the word enjoy, we're going to use an ing verb. I enjoy cooking with friends. And hello, if you're joining, we are talking about different words and phrases, also called chunks, when we use the ing verb afterwards. And we're not talking about the continuous form, we're just talking about an unconjugated verb. Like there's no subject to this verb, it just refers to the previous action. Can you please say the word interested? Okay, yeah, no, this is hard. So I would say interested, interested, interested. Instead of interested, 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 interested. Like 3 syllables, interested. Some people, when you're saying it really fast, they might say interested. Like they might not say the T, interested. I'm interested. But personally, I feel that I just say interested, interested. I say the 3 syllables, interested. I'm interested. So you might hear some people say interested, but I would say interested. Yeah, it's a weird one because it is a common word, but I think what happens there is there's, instead of like interested, we kind of flip. It's like interested. We kind of flip the sounds to make it easier to pronounce. Is it bad when I find a new word to go to the dictionary to know the meaning? No, I think going to the dictionary, I actually recommend before translating. So obviously, eventually, like if you're like, oh, I really want to know the translation, that's fine. But I would say like initial thing to do, what's better than using a translator is to go to an English dictionary and try to find the definition to understand it using other English words before you just find the translation into your native language. So I think it is a good thing to do. In general, I find that people kind of quit too early when trying to understand new words. So first, really read the context and give yourself a chance to maybe guess what the word means. And then look up what does it mean and see if you were right. That kind of thing, like it seems like a really small effort, but in the long term, that will help you remember the word better if you put in a little bit of cognitive effort to understand it before just looking it up. Because what happens if we just do a little translation is you see it and then it doesn't stick in the long-term memory. Okay, so we have an example. I can't stand people saying that there is no climate change at all. That is a good example. So I can't stand people saying. And that's also a good example that you can add subject as well. So I can't stand people saying, or I can't stand waiting. And both of those are good ways to finish the phrase here. And that would be a chunk too, because I can't stand or I can't help. These are not phrasal verbs. They're not idioms. They are just fixed chunks or fixed expressions that like to go together. So we have, I also like I can't help. I don't know if anyone knows the song by Fergie, Stacey Ferguson, called Clumsy, where they're like, can't help it, the girl can't help it. So I can't help laughing at his jokes. This expression means that I am not able to control myself. I can't help reading ahead in my book to see what happens next. It's like you have no impulse control and you have to do this action. So it's important to pay attention to phrases like this where probably you understand the word help in some contexts, but if you see this expression, I can't help doing something, This is not the same as to use the word help, like to give someone support or assistance, for example. So I can't help laughing at his jokes. It's like maybe I don't want to laugh at his jokes, but I can't control this action. I do it anyway. Oh, thank you. I cut my hair myself. I feel like throwing in the towel sometimes. I would add the word in. I feel like throwing in the towel sometimes. No, can't support is si quieres decir no puedo soportar, eso sería I can't stand en inglés. Support es un amigo falso con soportar. So it would be I can't stand. Eso significa que no puedo tolerar, no puedo soportar. I can't stand waiting in long lines. That's a good one. Yes, I can't help falling in love with you. Yeah, if you guys know this Elvis song. Exactly. Yeah. Also, music is a great place to pay attention to chunks. You can find a lot of chunks in music. You guys can find a lot of chunks in music. And then you can recognize them. Oh, I can't help. Nice. All right. So, I feel like eating ice cream. Nice. Yeah. So if you're talking to a friend and telling that, it's also good to think of like, okay, in what context? In the real world, what context can I use this in? Because I feel like with thinking of how to speak in English in a fluent conversation, it's a good strategy to kind of like plan your conversations in advance. So, okay, I'm about to meet with my friends. Probably we're going to talk a little bit about our opinions. I'm going to tell them what I'm interested in. I'm going to tell them what I can't stand. And I'm going to tell them what I enjoy doing. Or maybe we're talking about politics, and I'll use one of these phrases. Maybe we'll talk about my boss, and I'll tell them, oh, I'm so tired of my boss asking me crazy questions, you know? So try to think of real world examples when you could use any of these in your life. Oh, I feel like eating ice cream as a suggestion for an activity to a friend. Okay, I'm gonna go on to the next one. Yeah, I think with my hair, you can't tell if it's even or not if you have curly hair. So it's very forgiving. As you can see with the last expression here, to be tired of, it's really common in English when we're talking about emotions to have a phrase like this. The person, the verb to be, the emotion, and a preposition. I am tired of, and then afterwards we're going to have gerund. What's the difference between tired of versus tired from? Well, I would say that tired of can be used in more situations. Tired from would be like if you feel tired and there is something that you were doing all day that took your energy. I'm tired from the run that I went on earlier. Yeah, so tired from would be like there's a specific thing that you did that took all your energy and caused you to be tired. To be tired of, we can use in not just like you're sleepy, but more like you are kind of, something has gotten old, or you're kind of bored of something, like what Sylvia said here. I'm tired of listening to bad news. So it's like something that now has gotten old to you and you don't really feel like doing it anymore. Versus tired from is literally that you are physically tired because you did something that took your energy. Like, I'm tired from work. I'm tired from the run earlier. Like the cause of you being sleepy now. So it would be like a more specific, literal exhaustion would be tired from. I would say that's the difference. And tired of just sounds more natural with a gerund after it. Tired from, you could say I'm tired from running. Yeah, you could use a gerunds with both of them. I was thinking tired from, we also use a lot with objects. Tired from work. By objects, I mean nouns. So tired from work, tired from the run. All right, I'm going to bring us to the next. This is actually kind of related. So we had feelings and reactions. So similar to this one, right? Of to be tired of something. In general, I'm tired of going every bloody day to school, but I'm tired from walking the whole way home. Exactly. Yes. That is a very good distinction here. You can be tired of something and tired from it at the same time. I'm tired of doing the dishes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Think of like if you were going to complain to a friend or partner of their behavior, you can say, I'm tired of doing the dishes because you never do them. Like if you're going to have a confrontation and fight someone, you could say, I'm tired of. Okay, so we also use bloody. Is it a strong word? I would say that bloody is, I mean, it's strong, but it's also very common. Like, it's more common in British. Here's the thing. It's more common in British English, but they also like to curse a lot. Like, they use it a lot. So it's not like the strongest curse word because of the frequency of use compared to like the F word or something where it would be a little bit stronger. But yeah, I would say in the US it doesn't have that strength to it. Like it's a little bit funnier because for us it just sounds pretty British. So it loses a little bit of that sting. So someone from the US would probably find it less strong. Instead of bloody, I would say okay, one word that we use instead of bloody is, okay, these are like kind of like curses, but lighter. So you could say, I'm tired of going to that damn school every day. Like DAMN, like that damn school. And these are like curse words that are not bleeped out on the radio kind of vibes. It's like, is it a strong word? Yeah, but it's not so strong that they don't put it on the public radio. Is the kind of feeling. Or you could say that freaking school. This is like a light way to kind of say the F word without saying the F word. So you could use this one also like if you're in an interview or not I mean like if a celebrity is on Jimmy Fallon or something like that, they can use this kind of word without having a problem with the network or it being bleeped out. Not that you should ever use it in a job interview. I just want to make that clear about when I said the word interview, I meant like a talk show or something like that. Yes, I will save the live. I always upload the lives after. I'm tired of her complaining about, I would say I'm tired of her complaining about other people, or I'm tired of her talking bad about other people. I would kind of choose which verb you want to use after I'm tired of. I'm embarrassed of. I would say for me, the most common would be I'm embarrassed about, to be embarrassed about something. But you could also say embarrassed of. Yeah, it could be about or of. Both of those would work. I have a preposition. There are some cases. That's true. Yeah, some words are followed by gerunds or infinitives. It's not so many. It's like, love, hate, and then a couple words like to continue or start. There is a list of words that can be followed by gerunds or infinitives. Today, I'm just focused on phrases that are followed by gerunds. Yeah, okay, so here's a good question that Silly Sausage asked. Regret can be used with to also. So here's the difference. Regret with the infinitive is different from regret with the gerund. Regret with the infinitive is like a professional or nice way to say I'm sorry about something. I regret to inform you that your application was not accepted. I regret to tell you that the electricity bill was too high, or that sort of thing. Regret to is used in that context of giving someone bad news in a formal way. But to regret doing something is more about how you feel. I regret failing the test. Like, I feel bad about it. So they're both to feel bad about something, but there's a slightly different use there. Yeah. So if you want to give an example, you can tell us about using any of these phrases, something that you are nervous about, excited about, guilty about. And this is another benefit to using chunks, is that a lot of the time people struggle when they only learn word for word, guilty, excited, nervous. It might be difficult to remember what preposition goes with what word. But when we practice chunks, like the 3 words together, to be excited about, to feel guilty about, we're going to try to remember guilty and about coming together like a pack instead of word for word. So that is one way. A lot of the time people say, I just don't know how to remember prepositions. And if you're going to do it word for word, unless you are spending hours every day drilling and memorizing prepositions, which most people do not do, a much more effective way, instead of just that rote memorization, is to try to remember in complete chunks or complete phrases that this preposition goes together with something. I regret lying to my friend. Exactly. I regret not being able to attend your party. Yes, perfect. That's a good if any of you guys are wondering, how can we make it negative? This is a good example here. I'm going to pin it. Add not first. We don't use don't in this case because it's not a conjugated verb. So when we're making a gerund negative, if it's used in this way, we'll just put not before it. I regret not doing something, I would say. You feel guilty doing something. So remember, all of these, the reason that I'm teaching them together is that they all have the ing verb after. I'm worried about not speaking English fluently. We're going to use the ing verb after all of these. I'm afraid of seeing a scary movie. I'm worried about my plane crashing. I regret not graduating sooner. I feel guilty about telling him how I really felt. I'm excited about learning English today, right? All of these are going to have the ing verb after words. And part of the reason I'm teaching them in sets is because it probably won't make sense for you to translate it into your native language. So it's really better to learn it as a pack, as a set. I regret not talking to my friend before she passed away. That's a good example. I regret introducing you to the manager. Is it also right to say I regret not being able to attend to your party? Here, to attend your party, attend is what's it called? Attend is a transitive verb, which means that we can have an object after without a preposition. So some verbs are transitive and some are intransitive. For example, I can say, I cook food, but if I say I listen, I need to say I listen to music, right? So some verbs, we always need a preposition to then add an object afterwards. And attend is one of those where if you just say the event after, it's best to not use a preposition. If you used a different word like I participated, in that case with participate, it's a prepositional verb, so we're going to add in afterwards. I participated in the meeting, or I attended the meeting. So that's a good question. Some verbs we do not need to add a preposition after. Other verbs need a preposition for it to make sense to add an object. Like if you imagine, I went to the meeting. What? I went to the meeting. So some of them we need a preposition, others we do not. Okay, I'm going to bring us to the next one. I think this one we have feelings and reactions. I have a couple more to do. So the next one, So remember that I regret requesting your party. I feel like that would only make sense if you're talking about like video games. I don't know if you guys have ever played like Ragnarok or World of Warcraft or these games where you're in a party, like a group of people. And I feel like that example would only make sense if you requested to join someone's party. I regret requesting your party. You could say I regret requesting to attend your party. That could make sense. So we have being in the process of something, stopping and starting actions. We also have feelings, right? Talking about how we feel and our preferences. All of these situations we can think of combining with ing verbs. Also, thinking and deciding. So we have to think about something. So, for example, I'm thinking about changing jobs. Consider. She's considering moving abroad. So you could say she considered moving abroad or she's considering moving abroad. It's important that the word after consider is with the ing. It doesn't matter how you conjugate consider. Imagine. Can you imagine living on Mars? We also use the word to picture as a verb. Can you picture living on Mars? That's another way to use this word picture in English. This is a chunk here, right? So to make up my mind about. So I can't make up my mind about moving to another country or moving to another city. This one here, to make up my mind about, is like to say to decide. It's another way to say you can't decide something. To make up. You might hear people say, make up your mind, man. Make up your mind. The thought of. This is also an interesting one. The thought of speaking in public makes me nervous. So you can use the thought of plus any action. So that's another interesting. I would say if you're kind of new to this, focus on the first three here. If you are wanting a little bit more advanced phrases or chunks, focus on the last two here. So those are kind of a little bit more of an advanced level. If you're able to use these in real life, that would be a more advanced sentence. Let me see what you guys said. To explain the difference between think of and think about. So I would say, in a lot of contexts, you can use them interchangeably. To think, like, if you're telling a person, I'm thinking about you or I'm thinking of you, both of those are basically the same thing. If you're thinking about a person or thinking of a person, it's like you're considering them. But for the most part, the most common one in terms of frequency is going to be think about. I'm thinking about going to the park. I'm thinking about what he told me earlier. We're usually going to use think about when you're just literally doing the action of thinking. To think of would be a little bit different because to think of is a little bit more like to recall something. So I could say, can you think of a number between 1 and 10? Can you think of a word that begins with the letter Q? Or can you think of a reason why there's so much sadness in the world? So to think of is used a bit more for those situations where I want you to recall or have an idea occur to you. And to think about is the more common one, which is just generally the action of thinking. But both of them can be used interchangeably if I say I'm thinking of you or I'm thinking about you. In that specific case, you might hear both of them, if that makes sense. So for the most part, I recommend using to think about if you're just talking about regular old thinking. Let me see. Can you consider taking a leave because you have been at work for long? That's a good one. Yeah. I would say it would sound a little more natural to say for a long time. The thought of going on holiday soon keeps my hopes up. Yes, that's an excellent example. I'm going to pin this example. Where is it? Pin comment. That's a good example. Also, you're welcome. You're very welcome. The thought of teaching the Saturday class makes me feel motivated, for example. All right, so after this, I have one more set of words and phrases that I'm going to show you guys. Definitely, if you feel like adding another example here of one of these, go for it. I'm also going to add the full live to my page afterwards, so you can see it there. I'm thinking about learning a new subject, such as Chinese calligraphy. Nice. Awesome. And yeah, remember that to think about doing something, it can be used in different ways, right? So it can be literally, what are you thinking about? But also if you're kind of making a decision, we can use to think about. I'm thinking about doing this tomorrow. I've been thinking about the next meeting. Can you think of a brainstorming activity? Yes, exactly, Danielle. That would be the difference. Thought of moving abroad. Yeah, remember to say the thought or the thought. The thought of moving abroad. I Dream of Jeannie was a popular 70s series in Spanish. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I Dream of Jeannie. All right, so I'm going to bring us to the last but not least, the last set of words, problems and challenges. So some of these are just words. Others are complete chunks of words, chunks of phrases, chunks of English that are followed by the ing verbs, by the gerunds. So we have, when we're talking about problems and challenges, to avoid. He avoids talking about his ex. Probably a good thing, depending on the situation. To have trouble or to have a hard time. So both of these are synonyms with each other. They have the same use. She has trouble remembering names, or she has a hard time remembering names. It's basically to say it's difficult for her. There's no point in arguing about it. I would say that there's no point in and it's no use are also both synonym phrases. So for example, these would mean that it's useless or it's pointless. This is a good one. To say there's no point, it's pointless. It's pointless is another good word. But that would be followed by the infinitive. It's pointless to blah, blah, blah. So different structure there. I have a hard time memorizing all the grammar rules. Yeah, definitely. I feel like that is probably the case for a lot of people. I have a hard time memorizing all the grammar rules. I avoided going to the dentist for a long time. Same. I feel like after, like in the pandemic and then afterwards, I was scared to get my teeth checked. What maybe like grinding them at night was, I was grinding them at night due to stress. I avoid eating meat. Nice. Oh, we also have the last two, which I'll show you guys in just a second, but how can you differentiate the pronunciation of point in and pointing? Point in, pointing, ting. Because of the ing after in pointing, you pronounce the T a bit more. So there's no point in, point in, point in, point in, point in, pointing, pointing, pointing. One of them is like ting, and the other one is point in, point in, point in, pointing, pointing, pointing. I'm pointing over there. There's no point in pointing. There's no point in pointing. I would say also those are going to be used in very different situations. Like there's never going to be a time, because of the context of the other words in the sentence, there's never going to be a time that someone's like, there's no point in, and you're like, there's no pointing. Like that sentence would just not make sense. Or like, he is pointing. He is pointing. So like, in a way, even if it sounds similar, you don't need to worry about getting them mixed up because there's no sentence where both of them would make sense because they're such different parts of speech. So yeah, one of them is more like pointing, and in general, I would say focus on the context of the sentence and it will be obvious which one the person's talking about. The last two, to risk doing something. So like, I don't want to risk investing my money in Dogecoin, for example. So this, if you're kind of not sure with some of these, you can think of related words that use a similar structure. So to risk doing something or to avoid doing something, you might kind of use these in a similar way. Like, she risked skydiving and her friend avoided skydiving. So that could help you when we think of opposite words or related words. That's a better way to strengthen your memory with vocabulary. Don't just remember word for word, but find patterns. That's a good way to remember things. And the last one, to deny. He denied knowing anything about it. Maybe this is kind of like to avoid, because he was avoiding having problems because he didn't want to admit something. We used he admitted doing something wrong, or he denied doing something wrong. These are kind of like opposite words, and both of those are going to have an ing after. He admitted doing something wrong, or he denied doing something wrong. Let me see what you guys said. There's no use in having her living here anymore. Yeah, here it sounds a little bit more natural. It's no use having her live here anymore. It's not, I don't think it's grammatically incorrect what you said, but for me it just sounds a little more natural to say it's no use having her live here anymore, because live is used a bit more often as in a stative way as a simple verb. I can't make up my mind about stepping up a lot of harsh things to the plate. I would say here you might need to choose your expression. Like, you kind of have a combination of idioms. I can't make up my mind about stepping up and adding things to my plate. Could be. I would separate those into two different idioms. I can't make up my mind about stepping up and adding more things to my plate. I denied knowing anything about the case. Yeah, exactly. That's related to stative verbs if you're using them as an action that is just like a fact or a continuous action. I have no trouble listening to you. Nice. I like this example also because you're using the negative. So that's the beautiful thing about chunks is you use them as cheat phrases and then you can customize them. Make it negative, change the subject, and you have way more variety in how you're able to speak. Also, thank you. I'm glad that you've appreciated the class. There's no use in sticking to the diet anymore. Yeah, exactly. I said there's no use in sticking to the diet, but both are correct. There's no use sticking to the diet or there's no use in sticking to the diet. Both of those would be correct. Yeah. It's no use crying over spilt milk. Yes, this is a beautiful expression here. Yeah, this is a really good expression here. If you guys want to incorporate an English expression into your vocabulary, this is a good one. It's no use crying over spilt milk. I have trouble making out French grammar. Yeah, that's another good example. All right, so we learned a lot of phrases today. Good job, everyone. I feel like I bombarded you with phrases, but my main thing is instead of teaching, I think sometimes it's good to just focus on one, but I feel that more what I was trying to do is to get you to see some patterns, not that you need to remember every single word on every list, but if you kind of understand, oh, okay, I can use chunks with gerunds when I'm talking about continuity or starting something, if I'm in progress, emotions, avoiding something, right? So more kind of getting you to understand when you can use it in real life. And hopefully, if any of you have some time today, you can write yourself a little something in the notes on your phone using any of these fixed chunks or expressions, and maybe trying to personalize it for yourself as much as possible. I'm avoiding doing the chores. Yeah. I have to clean my house actually because I have friends visiting me at the end of the month, and they are going to stay in this room, which has converted itself into my office, and I have to make sure that they, I don't know, can put all their stuff in here. So awesome. I'm glad that you guys had a good class today. I'm also kind of it's been taking me a while, but I've been thinking about, with some of these live classes, cutting out the parts where I'm just chatting and just include kind of like the meat of the class and adding it to my YouTube channel as videos with timestamps so people can kind of navigate through it easier, because I know that on Instagram, if you're watching it back afterwards, it's like you have to listen to me talking for an hour to to maybe get to the part that you want to get to. So I kind of started that with another one, but yeah, it has been taking me a while because just in general, video editing is very time consuming. So if I'm able to do that, maybe with the past few classes that we've had, I feel they've been kind of helpful for you guys. If I'm able to have those on my YouTube channel, I'll let you guys know in case you want to navigate them without hearing every single thing that was said in the live class where I'm like, good morning. But yeah, you're welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you had a good class today and that you found it useful. Yeah, I know that also, Silly Sausage, right before I went live, I saw that you sent me a message about try to versus try with the gerund. This is something that is a little bit, I'm trying to think of how I would explain it. If you try to do something, like if you try to fix your computer, it's like you make an attempt for that result. So I tried to fix my computer. I tried to clean my house. It's like this is a specific action that you wanted to be completed. If you say try with the gerund, that would be like an activity that you are attempting. So, for example, I'm going to try to fix my computer. Oh, you should try restarting it. So it's like you should do this action. Is kind of like you should try doing something, is talking about an action to attempt, and then to try to is more focused on the result. I'll see if there's a better way for me to explain that. That's kind of like my quick explanation about it. Yeah, thank you guys so much. All right, well, have a really good day, everyone, and take care. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you in the next one. The next live class is going to be about reported speech, because that was another one that people voted on the last time. When do you use the phrase in the first place? In the first place is kind of like a qualifying expression. It's similar to even. So, for example, I could use it to say, like, imagine you go on a terrible date with someone and they're like giving you weird vibes and they bring you to a terrible restaurant and they say, you know, I don't know, they're like, actually, I hate you and I don't want to go on a date with you. You could say, excuse me, I didn't even want to be here in the first place. It's like, I didn't even want to be here. I didn't want to be here in the first place. Or like, I guess to say that like, how could I? Kind of like, even if the person hadn't said that, you already had a reason to not want to be there anyway. I would say something like that. Yeah. Or like, the English class was really hard for him, especially because he didn't even want to study English in the first place. So it's like, even to begin, this was already not what he wanted to do, so imagine it was even worse. I would kind of use it in that case, if that makes sense. Yeah. But have a good rest of your weekend, everyone. I'm gonna read this. Danke dir. Ich verstehe es besser jetzt. I understand it better now. All right, bye guys. Take care, everyone. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you next week to talk about reported speech.